Guys, today we have an amazing guest on the podcast. Brandon Stewart from Leading Second is going to be joining us. Now, Leading Second is an organization out of Team Church that helps specifically second chair leaders. Think your associate pastors, your executive pastors, people that will lead in your church that are not specifically the lead pastor. So if you're a lead pastor, don't check out just yet. There's still some amazing insight for your team in here. But I want to encourage you, send this to your team members. They're going to get a lot of value and a lot of insight from this interview. I also want to encourage you, if you've not gotten your free copy of Plan Your Visit Playbook, please do so. This is a free book that will help you grow your church with digital marketing. This is my book, and you can get it for free at planyourvisitplaybook.com. I'll cover the cost of the book if you cover the cost of shipping. It's only like $8, and it'll get sent straight to your house within a couple of days after you order it. And with that being said, let's jump into the interview. Welcome to the ChurchCandy Podcast, the podcast of sweet ministry success. I'm your host, Brady Sticker, and let's jump in. Guys, we have an amazing guest on the podcast today. I've got Pastor Brandon Stewart. Pastor Brandon, how are you doing today, man?
Hey, what's up, everybody? Great to be on here today. Brady, thanks for having me. I'm doing great.
Man, I'm so excited for this call. So for those of you that aren't familiar with Brandon and his ministry, so he is over Leading Second and over at Team Church. I told him right before we started recording, I almost feel like I already know him because I've gone through a lot of his training and the resources they provide specifically to second chair leaders, people that lead in ministries that might not be the lead pastor of a church. And so you guys are doing incredible things, man. Tell me what led you to here? How did you get to where you're at now in ministry?
Yeah, well, first things first, I'm just a local church nerd. You know, I'm the guy that grew up in the church, been part of the same church since I was one, and just kind of never left. I even had an opportunity to go away for college and decided to stay home and go to our Bible school at my home church. So I'm just sort of a product of the house. And along the way, I just kind of developed this very, very deep conviction that the local church is the greatest thing happening on planet Earth today. Maybe not the most perfect, but it is the only agency that Jesus is using to bring his kingdom to earth. And so I figure if that's what Jesus said he would love, and that's what Jesus said he would build, then it's probably the good thing for me to spend my life doing as well. And so, that's just like very, very deep conviction. I was on church staff for 10 years after Bible school. And then for the last 10 and a half years, we've had the opportunity to serve the greater body of Christ outside of our house, pastors and leaders and churches and whatnot through various means, most recently Leading Second. And what led us to Leading Second was I was sitting in a conference, well, many things, but I remember a striking moment. I was sitting in a conference a few years back now, a great conference. And they had pastors and church planters, stand up for us to honor them. And man, they're worthy of honor, double honor, I believe. And I'll give honor where honor is due all day long there. But I just got thinking that sitting beside every one of those pastors was probably a team of people who won't get the same applause and who won't get the same recognition, but are as invested into the life of their church and are just as invested into what God is doing. And I just started thinking about the power of the second chair and the power that so much health and alignment in our churches actually doesn't come from the first seat. It comes from the second seat and the team. And more is determined about a church's health than we realize sometimes by the second chair. So honestly, Leading Second is just our play to build the church. It's our play to see the church healthier, stronger, step into this new season that we find ourselves in with greater capacity. And this is just the need I saw and the need I wanted to attack. And I felt uniquely equipped to do so, being someone who wasn't a lead pastor myself, but someone who had been in the same church on church staff, off church staff. So man, it's just our heart to see the church healthier and stronger right now in this season.
I love it, man. Yeah, especially coming out of COVID. There's so many, I feel like I see so many people that I know that were serving in ministry that were second chair leaders that have fully stepped away. I
Yep.
don't even know if they're still like consider themselves a believer
Right.
today, from burnout and some of the things that happen in today's church culture. So I love what you guys are doing. Man, tell me, what's the biggest thing that you see as far as a need in second chair leaders?
Oh man, I see too many. Um, but to me, one of the great needs in local churches everywhere, I guess one thing that comes to mind is alignment. And how I look at 2020 and 2021, I look at it two ways. First of all, I see it as the great accelerator. Things happened in a short amount of time that would have happened probably over the next few years. It just all got condensed into a very short amount of time. In other words, people that were going to leave your church over the next 5 years, 7 years, they all kind of left at once.
Yeah.
If your church wasn't equipped to address or handle certain hot button issues or situations, it probably would have happened in the next few years. It just all happened at once. And so it was kind of the great accelerator um, of all these things. But the second thing to answer your question is it really became the great revealer of alignment and misalignment in our churches. I mean, we really saw that through the attractional approach to church, that we had assembled crowds but not aligned congregations.
Wow,
You
that's
know, that
good.
was, as my pastor said, we were assembled but not aligned. We had rooms full of people, but that did not mean that we were headed in the same direction, using the same language, or on the same page. And so out of that, I see what has emerged are second chair leaders who are now a little more fire tested, been through the battle. Those who are still standing really somewhere had to decide, I'm with my pastor heart and soul. But I think we need to rebuild the strength and rebuild the ranks and create alignment in our churches, in our team, around new things, around the right things, so that the next time the storm comes through, we're standing a bit stronger. I mean, Jesus taught us that foundation matters. He taught us of the two builders, and the one who built on the right foundation and the one that built on the wrong foundation. And when the storm came, one stood and one didn't, and I want to equip second chair leaders to build their lives personally and their teams and their churches on the right foundation. We will have more cultural storms. We
Yeah.
will have, I'm not saying it's going to be a pandemic or something, but we will have more moments like what we've been through. We're not out of it. This could potentially be a new normal for us. And so if the bands of the hurricane are coming through, I just want to build churches that are standing on the right foundation, aligned, healthy, strong, and equipping second chair leaders to lead that charge in their churches.
Yeah, man, that's so good because I'll even see like I'll go visit a friend's church and he'll be on staff, maybe a youth pastor or even like a worship leader or associate pastor. I'm like, oh yeah, here's talking about the lead pastor. Oh, here's so and so. Oh, I hate it when I hear he does this,
Right.
and he'll almost be like talking down the leadership of the church, and I'm like, dude, what are you doing? Like, shouldn't you be bought in? Like, shouldn't you
Right.
be pushing towards? And so what are some practical things, and like go ahead and speak to the second cheerleaders that are listening, like what are some practical things they can do to align themselves with the leadership and the vision of their church?
First of all, I want to go back to something you just said about the way that we relate with and talk to our pastors. Um, do a Bible study sometime, leader that's listening, on the biblical narrative of how God treats sin and how God treats rebellion. Okay.
Mm,
Just look at it, because ultimately the biblical narrative on sin is a beautiful story in that we are sinners, but he provided Jesus as a substitute for our sin, and we have mercy and grace in that. So the story of God, how he approaches sin, is beautiful. Look at how God approaches rebellion and division. The New Testament writers save their strongest language for those who cause division in the church. and look at entire groups of people swallowed up by the earth because they attempted rebellion. I mean, I think sometimes we get a little casual in our relationship with authority, and we need to start seeing it how God sees it and realize he doesn't take authority and division lightly. So
Yeah.
that was just for free. You didn't ask about that one, but
No,
being the
that's
second chair
great.
guy, like, you're bringing up something that is a very real part of church life that I think needs to be eradicated from our teams and from our churches. And that is a light or a casual approach or touch toward authority. You know, God establishes all authority. And I'm glad you're raising that issue because to me, if you can't tell, it's a little bit of a passion point.
Yeah.
I'm forgetting your question though, because I wanted
No,
to
yeah, just
address
like what are
that one.
practical things? I'm a second chair leader. What are practical things I can do to make sure I'm raising my teams in a way that's aligning with the leadership of the church and I'm aligning myself with
Yeah.
it? Because if you're saying alignment's like the biggest thing that we need to do, what are some practical
Yep.
things we can do there?
I think realize number one, that you represent the pastor to the people, not the people to the pastor. That
Wow.
it's not your job to be Absalom and gather the complaints of the people and cut them off on their way to the king and like create awkwardness between them and the king, or even come into staff meetings feeling like you're representing, you know, all the issues of what's going on in the church. What your church really needs, what your pastor really needs, is for you to be his or her representative to the people. In other words, stand in for your pastor,
Mm,
lead on behalf of your pastor. Realize that as a second chair leader, that's actually your assignment. That's why you're there, is to occupy spaces and moments of leadership on behalf of your pastor so they don't have to be in that room. I think some of the greatest compliment my pastor has given me over the years is to stay out of rooms so that I could lead on his behalf. And so I would just say, number one, you got to see who you are to your pastor, that that you are a valuable and important part of creating alignment. And sure, your pastor could communicate vision well. Sure, your pastor could teach some of these things well, but just think of the potency if it comes from you as well. One can put 1,000 to flight, two can put 10,000 to flight. Like, just imagine the multiplied effect that you could have as a fully bought in, fully aligned person standing in that room on behalf of your pastor, sounding exactly like your pastor, on the same page with your pastor. So I would just say, see it. Like, you have to see the space that you could occupy
I love it, man.
for your pastor and for your team.
I love it. Yeah. So instead of, taking all the complaints and, oh, it's way too hot in the sanctuary, or the music's too loud, and, oh, we need to do this, or we need to do this outreach, and instead of bringing all those to the pastor, rather than doing that, take the vision of the leadership and
Right.
of the pastor, and let's execute that, and let's pour that into our people. Man, I love it. That's awesome, dude. That's awesome. Let me ask you this, man. You know this, but at Church Candy, we help churches with digital marketing, right? We help them with Facebook ads and Instagram ads. And I've been really active on TikTok recently. Me,
Mm.
like, personally, just making content for churches and for pastors on how to use social media and things like that to just reach more people. And one of the comments I got, it really stood out to me, and I didn't even know how to answer it. It was, what do I do if our pastor doesn't even want to do ads or doesn't even want to invest into social media? So what do you do, and what do you advise second chair leaders to do whenever there's something? It doesn't have to just be digital marketing and social media, whatever the avenue might be. Whenever you have a great idea and hey, this is really something that would be really beneficial to our church, what are things these second chair leaders, like, what do you do if the main pastor, their main leader, says, no, we don't want to do that?
Yeah. It's a great question. And I think the first thing I would say is, number one, you're going to have to get used to this territory because you're going to be there for the rest of your life as a second chair leader. You're never going to get beyond that space. That if you have a brain and you have a touch of vision, and you are passionate about your work, you're going to see things that you'd like to do that your pastor or those you report to are not ready to do yet. So I guess number one is just welcome to the club. Like, glad you're here.
Yeah.
I've been doing this for 20 years post Bible school with my pastor, and I still am far from graduated that space. In fact, maybe that's why you're there. Maybe you're there to actually see things for your pastor. Maybe you're actually there to bring those ideas, but just realize when you do, they might be fully baked in your mind, but you might be dropping them into a cold oven, on his side, and you're going to have to warm that up and cook that and marinate that to get that to a place where your pastor is ready to make that decision. I believe it's Stephen Covey who refers to the concept of your circle of influence versus your circle of concern. I'm not sure if you've ever heard this or heard this taught a long time ago. Your circle of influence is a small circle, and it's the things that you can actually do something about. So everything that falls within your circle of influence, you can go and make that decision. You can implement that. Circle of concern are things that bother you, things that matter to you, and it's a much bigger circle typically. And the frustrating part about leadership is that when things fall inside our circle of concern, but outside our circle of influence. I mean, these are the things that bother me, but I don't yet have the influence to do something about. My pastor. Maybe I don't have that place of trust for my pastor to want to act on my idea, or, maybe I'm not skilled enough to really be the one making that decision, or whatever the case may be. What I have learned, Brady, is that our relationship with our pastors develops at the speed of trust. And I sort of play the long game on this stuff. I figure no single issue is worth damaging my relationship with my pastor or my church over. I play the long game on this stuff. So if something falls outside of my influence, but it bothers me, it matters me, I just simply go to work to build my influence. And when I say influence, I mean the things I can actually do something about. I go to work to build trust with my pastor. And what I have found, even if I've had to sit on it for years, what I have found is that if I build trust and I lead with character and I lead integriously, and there's good fruit on the vine, so to speak, from my ministry, from my seat on the team, what I have found is that eventually that circle, the things I'm able to do something about, eventually it catches up to that area. And I'm getting to speak into things now and be a part of leadership conversations now I only dreamed of being able to be a part of years ago. But because I stayed around and I stayed faithful and I built trust and I didn't break trust, which trust, by the way, is, gained in drops and lost in buckets. So because I didn't break trust, terribly along the way, in time, I'm now my circle of influence is caught up to a lot of those things, and now I'm able to speak into a lot of stuff. And does that make sense to you? You got to be willing to play the long game and work on that relationship with your pastor. Last thought is you also need to learn what language your pastor thinks. My pastor's a bottom line, thinker. He wants to know numbers, and he wants to know data, and he wants to know, ROI. And that's a challenge for me because I'm a creative, I'm a feeler. I am a gut. I can operate on instinct all day long. I can't tell you why it'll work. I just know it's going to work. Problem is that's not how my pastor makes decisions. So I had to learn to communicate, how he wants to receive communication, even though it's very different from my wiring as a creative.
I think that's some great practical advice. Number one, communicate how they communicate, especially if you've got an idea or something that and hey, this would be great to fix X, Y, and Z, right? And then I love what you said. Hey, welcome to the club. Like this is a lot gonna be how it is. Right. But I loved your analogy of it could be super warm in your oven. You put it in there, it's cold. Almost like planting seeds, and you just gotta wait to be able to reap that fruit, man. I think that's great. I think that's super wise. I want to speak a little bit to the lead pastor that might be listening. What are some things that you might encourage lead pastors to do to be able to raise up these second chair leaders?
Oh, this is like big question. And to be honest, I'm trying to figure out how we can do more in our ministry to answer this question. We get to talk to second chair leaders all day long. But there's nothing more powerful than a pastor's leadership in the church. And I will say to pastors, I go all over the place and tell people I've been a part of the same church for 40 years and I've been on the same team for 20 years, or, all these things, which are true. And I think it's part of my testimony. But what I would say is that's not just possible because like I'm some cool, great guy or I'm super faithful or super loyal, which we all know I'm great and cool and awesome and all those things. We already know that. I'm joking, but honestly, my pastor deserves huge credit for the longevity of myself and several others on our team, because I'm not alone in my little resume I just mentioned. He I'll tell you simply how I would put it to pastors. Your staff or your team are constantly adding up an equation. And the equation they are constantly adding up in their mind is this single thought. Everything comes back to this thought. Can I thrive here?
Mm,
Think about it. Can my family thrive here? Can my dreams, my ministry calling thrive here? Can what I feel God's asking me to do for him thrive here? Can my marriage thrive here? Can I thrive financially here? I mean, everything comes back. And as long as team members can add up in the affirmative, in the positive, yes, I can thrive here. Generally, they stay and are happy. Side note, we should be more focused on God's calling and God's assignment in our life than our happiness. I do want to qualify this because it's not always been easy and roses.
yeah.
So, we got to have the right anchor. But I'm just adding this up, like we get, the Bible says hope deferred makes the heart sick.
Yeah.
So the second or maybe a season where we enter into I can't thrive here, we start to run some risks of getting heart sick. We start to run some risk of contempt starting to grow in leaders toward
Yeah.
the house, and so I just think a pastor be really wise to have his or her finger on the pulse, of where their team, where their key team is at, and ask, are you thriving? Can you thrive here right now? And address the issues that pop up, along the way. If you keep your team unstuck and you keep, the resources flowing, the communication through it, I've just found that people really do want to go the long haul. We just got to add that up the right way.
Yeah, so good, man. So good. I think that's really good because a lot of the times you have, so like I'm come from a church planting background, like the church I serve at, we were a church planted in
Right.
2019. And so, other than just a couple of key leaders that moved here, we've had to raise up these people. And it's awesome. I love our pastor is really good at finding people. And it's not, hey, we
Mm.
really have a need in our kids ministry for a leader. We have a need here. It's like, hey, where do you feel called, and how can I help raise you up in that, so where you can serve in our ministry and
Right.
being fulfilled in what God has called you to do. I think that's so good, man. Flip side of that, right? Someone that's serving in church and they want to get more involved and they want to serve at a higher capacity in leadership. What are some things that you would recommend for them to do to kind of work their way up the ranks, if you would?
Yeah, I think what I would say is promotion is God's job, preparation is ours.
Mm,
So, it's think of it like this. Let's say you got a wild hair one day and you want to plant a garden. I don't know that I recommend it, but let's just say this is what is on your heart. And you are full of faith. You feel called to have a garden, and I'm gonna make salad every day from my garden, or whatever this great vision is for your garden. Um, I'll tell you what, you can do a lot of things. You cannot make a plant produce a harvest.
mm,
It's above your pay grade. That plant is going to produce fruit when it is good and ready and when it's on time
yeah,
to produce. You cannot make it. There's nothing you can do to make it. Now, you can prepare the environment around the plant. You can make sure it has the right soil, right water, right food, pruning. We could do a whole message just on that. You take care of the environment, you take care of preparing what you can. But fruit's kind of beyond your pay grade there.
yeah,
And I think we need to put more focus not on where I'm going, but how am I doing? Am I healthy? So I would say, number one, trust God with your ministry ambitions and the timing, give it to him. faithfully serve with what is in your hands today, all while creating greater capacity in your life to handle more. Because what I have learned about promotion is it sneaks up on you. It's like all of a sudden one day you feel like you're twiddling your thumbs, you feel like you're ready for more, you don't know where the more is coming, then all of a sudden one day, one text, one call, one email, and it's like game on. And there's a proverb that says the best time to plant a tree was 10 years ago, and the second best time to plant it is now. In other words, like opportunity will sneak up on you, and you should have been getting ready for that thing before the opportunity had ever presented itself. So just I say preparation is your job, and growing and increasing your own capacity, all while you trust God for the right opportunities, the right moments to step into his calling in his timing for his purpose.
Yeah, so good, man. So good. And I think that's super relevant today because you look at so many, even like leaders, like lead pastors, to where their character wasn't at the same level of their skills, right? They could be a
Yeah.
great preacher and communicator, and their character wasn't there. And now
Yeah.
it seems like every single like big name pastor that I looked up to growing up has either stepped away from ministry or had a moral
Yeah.
failure or whatever might have happened. And so I definitely think in today's culture that's super
Yeah.
super important.
Yeah. What's going on in that space is very real, and it's tragic. And we got to be really sober with how we talk about it and how we wrestle through it. Remember, we have a plank in our eye for every speck of dust that somebody has in theirs,
Yeah.
and that's the gospel way, the kingdom way to look at it. But you're right, we can't ignore the fact that skill took many to a place character couldn't sustain. And you're bringing up the right thing right now, that character matters in ministry. Bottom line, the biblical qualifications for ministry have nothing to do about accomplishment.
Yeah.
They have everything to do with character, and it's probably about time we get back to those things.
Yeah. 100%, man. 100%. Dude, I love everything you guys are doing at Leading Second. Why don't you share a little bit more about the actual practical things if someone wants to get more involved, or a pastor wants to get their team involved in what you guys have going on?
Yeah, I'm so excited about Leading Second right now. We've kind of created it as this space, this tribe for anyone who leads from the middle. And we have a thriving podcast. If you're looking for another podcast or resource to listen to, many weeks of the year, we put something out on Thursday mornings. Really proud of the conversations that we have on there. This launch, but coming out of COVID, starting last fall, we just went for it again
Yeah.
in a fresh way. We held our first conference uh, type event this year called Leading Second Camp. And it was for executive pastors, campus pastors, lead team members, a huge success. And next year, we're hosting it again for year number 2 in Salt Lake City, Utah. So really excited about that. Um, don't quote me on this. This is going on a recorded podcast, so that's a funny thing to say. But we may be working on a second date for that as well. Just trying to increase the capacities of that. So if you're on a team, you're an executive pastor, a campus pastor, like this is a conference for you to attend. We don't not a lot of pastors there. It's just us. It's a room full of peers. And God did something so special in the room. And I'm believing he's going to do it this year. Also really excited. I appreciate you've engaged in some of our resources. Later this year, early next year, the date is still TBD, but we're releasing a whole new video resource platform for Leading Second with a whole bunch of new resources we're literally in production on right now. So excited for some tools for leaders to use with your leaders in your teams at your church. We just want to fill some of the gaps we see in resources for second chair leaders and arm you with some things you can use for yourself and your team. So that'll be coming over the next few months. Until then is good old Instagram, and stay in tune with us. We just trying to do some things every day to add value to your life and just help you think the right way and help keep your heart right so that you go the distance and ultimately can just be found faithful with your assignment in the second chair.
I love it, man. I love it. Well, sweet Brandon, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us on today's podcast. Tell me, where can people find you?
Yeah, leadingsecond.com, at leading second on Instagram, myself on Instagram, Brandon M. Stewart, because I haven't been able to talk Brandon Stewart out of giving me his handle. Brandon M. Stewart on Instagram. And yeah, reach out if we can help or serve in any way.
Awesome. Well, sweet Brandon, again, thank you so much for joining us. And guys, that's going to wrap it up for today's podcast. Y'all have a good one. Man, what amazing insight from Pastor Brandon. Pastor Brandon, thank you so much again for joining us. Thank you to Soulbox, the group that recorded our podcast intro and outro music. And again, if you've not gotten your free copy of Plan Your Visit Playbook, I want to invite you to go to the link in the description, planyourvisitplaybook.com, and get your free copy today. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.